So, in this video we are going to talk about upadana, clinging, which is a very well known fundamental tenet of the Buddhist teaching. We're going to look at what clinging actually is, what is it that clings and what is clung to, and also how clinging then leads to action or becoming. So we have to take our time here, we have to take it steady. We can't rush through this. The first point we need to make is that we have to take into account this a priori, axiomatic, first principle assumption of selfhood, that there is a duality to life between me as a separate ongoing entity and the universe which is other to it. And as we discussed in previous videos, the whole point of the Buddhist training is to come to see that this is an erroneous, spacious belief. That it is, but however, it is so fundamental that it is incredibly difficult to come to see and understand. It requires an ongoing, deep commitment to mindful observation of one's experience in order to come to see how it is actually the case that life can unfold as it unfolds, and that there is no requirement for a separate entity, a me, behind experience in order for it to work. So if we begin with the premise that there is this belief which lacks anything to justify it, so there is this sense of emptiness, there is a sense of what we might call existential angst or loneliness, and a need to substantiate the belief through identification with something, with anything, in order to give a sense of substance and solidity to existence. So, and this is so deep, what the ignorant mind does, and the ignorant mind is, by that I mean the mind that assumes duality, assumes selfhood. What it does is it finds things in experience that it can claim to be itself. And the Buddha used a fourfold method to describe this identification. Either whatever it is myself, or myself is contained within it, or it is contained within myself, or that self is the owner of that thing. So there's a fourfold way in which we identify with components of experience to try to solidify that belief in the self. So what are the first things with which the ignorant mind attempts to identify with in experience? And those are what in Buddhism we call the Five Aggregates, which I used in the video last time. I didn't point out, however, that I was actually putting a PDF in the links below. So there's a PDF of the Five Aggregates, and they constitute everything that actually occurs in conscious experience moment by moment, but they are all arising and passing away moment by moment. None of it actually passes through time. There are just things that arise and pass away. So there's this infinitely complex matrix of conditioned and conditioning phenomena, which are the Five Aggregates. So the ignorant mind attempts to identify with and cling to these five aggregates. So I thought it'd be useful just to spend a little bit of time just going through these. The PDF's downloadable, so you'll be able to go through it in more detail if you wish. But I hope all Vipassana meditators are thoroughly studied in these five aggregates. You can't do Vipassana meditation, insight meditation, without having an ongoing understanding of what these five aggregates are. But they are all ordinary components of our ordinary experience. So materiality, for instance, the four great elements: extension, cohesion, temperature, motion. So when you use your tactile sense, your bodily sense, you touch something, there is a sense of hardness, isn't there, or a sense of softness. There's a sense of heat or a sense of cold. There is a sense of distension or movement, and that's essentially what the four great elements are talking about in terms of the tactile sense. So it's very mundane, it's very down to earth, literally, and so those are elements of experience which can be consciously acknowledged, mindfully acknowledged, and seen to be arising and passing away moment by moment. You have to look quite carefully, but with enough mindful attention and insight into the three marks, it becomes obvious that these things are actually arising. They may very well reiterate. There might be another iteration of a very, very similar experience, but it's not the same experience as the one a moment ago. It's a new one. Going slightly off on a tangent here, but you think about that. How could something be sustained through time? If the sense of touch was sustained through time, it meant you could never have a new touch arise. The former touch must cease in order to allow the touch that is being experienced now to occur. So as your mindfulness improves, as your concentration improves, as your insight deepens, you actually see, yes, that something has to cease in order for a present experience to arise. Slightly going off the point there, but so the materiality aggregate is all things material. So the sensitive phenomena that give rise to sense consciousness, so the sensitive matter of the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, and the body, and their equivalent objective objects, so shape and colour or visible form to the eye, sound, smell, taste, and obviously the tactile objects are an admixture of extension, temperature, and motion. So the sexual mark of femininity and masculinity, bit of a contentious issue, that one, but all that's saying is that there are marks of fundamental marks of masculinity and femininity. Same with communicating phenomena. So what this is communicating phenomena that's occurring right now. It's vocal intimation and bodily intimation. So those things are occurring now, but they're arising and passing away. See that wave that just occurred? Where is that now? So we could go on with that. Let's move on to feeling. So essentially there are three basic forms of feeling. There are pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings, and neutral feelings that arise on contacts. Perception, more difficult one to sort of parcel or divide up perception, but you can say that there are different perceptions via each of the sense bases, including the mind base. And a perception is simply the label that we apply to an object, so we know that it's that object and we can recognise it as that object and not confuse it with another object. So more subtly, obviously, it also includes things like memory. Let's have a look at the other two. Mental formations is a very wide aggregate, includes a lot of different states. There are some mental formations which are common to all moments of consciousness. So moments of consciousness arise and pass away. They do not. Consciousness does not pass through time. There's a whole succession of moments of consciousness, but they arise and pass away. Now, there are some mental qualities that are common to all states of consciousness. There has to be contact, there has to be some form of volition, one-pointedness, life faculty, and attention. There are some mental formations which are occasional, initial application, sustained application, decision, energy, zest, desire to do. While I think about it, that there's a marked difference between the desire to do a certain thing and the out and out unwholesome quality of mental formation of craving. So that's really important to understand. Craving is the passionate desire for life to be different than it is, based on a fundamental misinterpretation of reality, and it gives rise to results which are painful and disagreeable, and it's the fundamental cause of all suffering. Desire to do is simply the desire to do something, to wash your face, to brush your teeth, to go for a walk, to whatever. So it might very well be that there is a desire to do which is part of an overall attempt to do something unwholesome. But equally, the desire to do might be simply functional, like just brushing your teeth, or it might be actively wanting to desire to do something good. So the Buddha had no craving, but he had lots and lots of desire to do, and I for one am tremendously grateful for that, because it means we have this wonderful teaching still here 2,500 years ago, 2,500 years later, and that's down to his desire to do. So of course the whole point is it's not the Buddha's desire to do, it's just the arising of desire to do. We'll come on to this. So mental formations include all the negative or unwholesome activities of mind, delusion, conceit, hatred, worry, sloth, doubt. So all the hindrances are mental formations. Also wholesome formations, faith, mindfulness, a positive sense of shame, renunciation, friendliness, equanimity, tranquillity, compassion. These are all on the positive side. All the 7 factors of enlightenment are all mental formations, for instance. So it's a big hat, that particular aggregate, with lots and lots of different possible states that arise in the whole process of generating conscious experience. And then we have consciousness itself, which is a topic of great confusion to people. However, if you break it down into different types of consciousness, that's what allows you to see that no 2 moments of consciousness are the same, that consciousness does indeed arise and pass away. So there's, and people get so caught up in the hard problem of consciousness. It's not actually that hard. There is seeing. You're familiar with that, right? Hearing. I hope you're familiar with that right now. Smelling, maybe less so. Tasting, possibly. Touching, maybe. These are all things that you are intimately familiar with. Consciousness is simply knowing an object. It's the knowing of an object. So it's the knowing of a sight, a knowing of the sound, a knowing of a touch, a taste, a smell. And then there's also knowing of mind. There's knowing the content of mind. So there's knowing of a perception, there's knowing of a feeling, there's knowing of a memory, there's knowing of a concept, or knowing of a string of concepts, thought, thinking. And this is the one that really confuses people, and again, this is subject to practicing insight meditation. If you're not practicing insight meditation, if this is just a speculative, a conceptual thinking game for you, it's not going to make any difference. If someone's actually meditating, though, it makes a huge difference. There's a 7th kind of consciousness called called mind consciousness element, which takes any of the preceding 6 types of consciousness as its object. So that's what gives you that 3D effect, that sense that there is a conscious witness behind experience. So there is an object, say a sound, and there's the knowing of the sound, hearing. And then you ask, well, what knows hearing? People say, oh, it's a conscious witness behind experience. No, that is a subsequent moment of consciousness which takes the hearing itself as the object. That subsequent moment of consciousness has arisen because of the conditions, because there was hearing is one of the conditions, so it takes the hearing as the object. So that subsequent moment of consciousness is conditioned, it arises, and it ceases instantly, to be replaced with another moment which is very, very similar and may take a very, very similar object, but it's not the same object, it's not the same hearing, and it's not the same subsequent moment of consciousness which takes hearing as its object. Bit tangly, but once you actually start to see it in your meditation and in your mindfulness practice, it becomes very, very clear. Okay, so those are the 5 aggregates. I'm just going to take a quick pause there because I've been talking non-stop for quite a while.